Hey guys, it's your boy Q Lewis, and I got my man Bo, of course.
I say,
man, what's going on, dog? Welcome to another episode of Beards, Bourbons, and Whiskeys, man. Today we're a little excited, all right? So we moved past Jack Daniels, all right? So we're past Jack Daniels, we're past the regular whiskey, and we're moving on to a bourbon. So today, the star of the show today is Four Roses, all right? So make sure you check that out. It's Four Roses here, and there's a unique story behind Four Roses, which we actually just learned today by reading the back of the label. So I'm a little excited about that. We'll read that to y'all in a second. Don't forget, though, if you are checking us out right now, to make sure that you do follow us on Facebook and on the, what's the Instagram? Yeah, we're on Instagram. And Beards, Bourbon, and Whiskey. All right, so make sure you just plug that in, and you can pull up our IG and the Facebook page. We would appreciate a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, because we're going to have some fun. So if you missed the last episode, then we are just two dudes with beards who talk about bourbon and whiskey, man, and sometimes life. All right, so we're going to put all of that together. And that noise in my ear is really annoying me right now. Y'all can't hear it, but it's okay. So I'm going to get that edited out. But yeah, so Four Roses, man, that's what we're talking about today. Bo, this was your decision on Four Roses. So tell us a little bit about why you chose this.
Yeah, Four Roses, man. For one thing, it's not too expensive. It's about 21 bucks a bottle. Okay. You know what I mean? So it's definitely affordable. But like, let's say if you really, you get ready to go out for that night, you want a couple cocktails or something like that, Four Roses is definitely an option you can use to those folks that like to have mixed drinks. Okay. So put a little Coke, a little ice, a little, you know, lemonade, whatever you want, your bourbon. Okay. And then, take a couple sips and I say it's good because you can still taste the bourbon and it doesn't overpower whatever you put in the drink, right?
Exactly. Okay.
So, I mean...
So it's not real harsh.
No, not real harsh at all.
Okay.
So I think it's a real good bourbon for folks who kind of want to get into that bourbon game, just kind of experience what it's like to have, something neat, something straight, and, and something mixed with a cocktail. So. For
sure. All right, so basically this is like a beginner's bourbon.
I would say so, yeah. Okay. I don't want to put it out there like Four Roses is. Everybody got to start right here. But, if you were looking for something nice and easy to kind of get to the bourbon game, it's a good bottle for you.
For sure. Okay, so make sure you check out Four Roses. They actually do have a website as well. You can Google that. Pull up the website. The website is pretty dope, too.
Yeah, it's right. They put a lot of money into that.
Yeah, obviously so. It's like a little movie or something. Yeah. Shit for real. So shout out to Four Roses, though. But earlier today, I actually, I'll go ahead and tell you the truth, we cheated a little bit. Had some single barrel Four Roses, which is very delightful. So we may talk about that later on in the season. But today we're talking about just the you said you call this yellow label, right? Yep. So yellow label Four Roses. Something interesting though. So before we got on camera, Bo was reading the back of the packaging. So we actually found out why it's called Four Roses. So I'm just gonna read what it says here.
Dope little story.
Yeah. So on the back of the bottle it says Paul Jones Jr., the founder of Four Roses Bourbon, became smitten. All right, smitten. In case you don't know what smitten is, because that's an old school word, it just means he got sprung by a beautiful Southern belle. He sent a proposal to her, and she replied that if her answer were yes, she would wear a corsage of roses on her gown to the upcoming grand ball. When she showed up the night of the ball in her beautiful gown, she wore a corsage of 4 red roses. Right? Right. Oh, so he later named his bourbon Four Roses as a symbol of his devout passion for the lovely belle.
Strong story.
That's a strong story. Yeah, so needless to say that he was pretty much sprung over this Southern belle, and that's how the name Four Roses came about. Pretty interesting story, I guess.
It is.
Right?
It is. It's
but you know what? Alcohol and women often go together.
Oh man, sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Sometimes good.
Hopefully more times good for y'all.
Right, that's true. All right, so let's just get down to it, man. I'm about to. We gotta hit our ritual, Oh
my gosh, yes, there we go.
We gotta hit that. Like we told y'all last episode, this is a urban, probably an urban myth, because I don't think it actually works. But supposedly, if you smack the bottom of the bottle before you drink, then no one will get sick or throw up. And I have to say that we've done that before, and people have still gotten sick and thrown up, so it possibly doesn't work. But we still do it anyway, you know what I'm saying? Kind of crazy like that. Right. But yeah, I just wanted to see what it smells like here in comparison.
What that nose is like.
Yeah. It doesn't smell as sweet as the single rose. So
I'm single barrel.
Yeah. Single barrel, yeah. So it doesn't smell as sweet, but there is a hint of sweetness though.
It's got that, like that. It's almost like a fruity smell.
Yeah. That's what it is. Let's take a look here. So it's still got some sweetness, but not like the normal sweetness. So I think I see what you meant now. It's like it would go good with a mixer. This is one of the few that I think has a kind of a taste to it. So if you mix it with something, I don't think it'll be too bad.
Nah, I don't think it'll be too overpowering.
Yeah, it won't be too overpowering. But by itself, it's actually pretty good though. Yeah, I actually thought I wanted to put some ice in it at first, but I think that putting ice in it probably would kind of deaden it a little bit because it's not really strong.
No, it's the yellow label is not as strong as single barrel, or some of the other releases they have. Sure. Right.
Now we mentioned the word single barrel already, so let's give a little background knowledge on that. So single barrel, from our discussion earlier, pretty much just means that this was aged and taken from one barrel. So it's not a mixture of a lot now, right?
Right, because Four Roses, and I don't know all the specifics into it, so there may be more or less, whatever. But they have like 10 different recipes or whatnot, from 10 different barrels or whatever that they kind of make, the yellow label and whatnot out of. So yeah, it doesn't have that strong or as potent, of a taste or aroma as a single barrel does. So.
Gotcha.
And then obviously it's more technical than that, but I think that's pretty much my high level, what the big difference between a single barrel and like a yellow label or something like that. So.
And for anybody breaking into the whole bourbon and whiskey thing, then another main thing that's different is the price.
The price, right?
So the price is definitely a little bit more expensive.
Yeah, like I said, this
single barrel.
Yeah, this is gonna run you, like I said, about $21, $20. Single barrel gonna start at about $40, maybe $42, something like that. So
still not bad. Like it's not breaking the bank, but obviously is more than the normal.
Most definitely.
But I still think this is a good one. And just from the conversation that we had previously about Jack Daniels, again, no diss on Jack Daniels, but you can definitely tell the difference between the grades of liquor. Now, when we're talking about bourbons and whiskeys, I know that a lot of people might read the title of our podcast and think that it's redundant, but I just have to remind people that although all bourbons are whiskeys, not all whiskeys are bourbons. So that's how we came up with that concept.
Yeah, we might throw some scotch up here for next time.
Definitely gonna throw some scotch in there.
Definitely a whiskey, but definitely not a bourbon.
Right, exactly. So it's all different. Something to get us away from cognac and get us into a different arena of the taste palette, if I might say. So if we might make it to the Bourbon Society, I got to use words like that.
Yeah.
But now, when it comes to bourbon and whiskey, though, which do you actually prefer? Like, is there a preference? Would you rather have bourbon as opposed to just regular whiskey?
Yeah, personally, I'd rather have bourbon. Any day of the week. Yeah, unless, like I said, like we out getting it in, like we talked about last week. Yeah,
right.
I'm probably gonna go to Jack Daniels route or something like that, maybe, or Crown Royal or whatever. But
shout out to Crown.
Like bourbon, shout out to Crown Royal. But bourbon, just I'm on some chill, at the cigar bar or at the crib or something like that.
For sure. Now that's a whole other aspect right there.
Cigar bar, most definitely.
That's a whole other aspect, and we probably won't touch much into that because I know the cigar people might come for us. But even though the Bourbon Society already gonna come for us because we're not using all the technical terms probably, and that's okay though because we're trying to make that connection between us regular folks like ourselves and bourbon snobs. And yes, I'm not just saying that. That's an actual term.
And and that's not a hit against the Black Bourbon Society, man.
No, not at all.
Some good folks and good information out there.
Yeah, we want to get to that level.
Yeah, definitely want to get to that level. But and that's just how intimidating it could be sometimes. Like
it is. Yeah.
I'm not an expert at all, but I know a little bit about bourbon. And looking at the Black Bourbon Society and whatnot, I'm reading some of the reviews. And I'm like, what are these dudes talking about?
Like, and they really know their shit. Right?
Yeah, they break it down. You know what I mean? So like to bridge that gap, and I wish there was something like, okay, I just got into this, but like I definitely ain't at that level yet.
Right. I mean, you got some who are able to like really just how we did. Like I smell the sweetness in it, but they can actually smell where it's coming from.
Fruity accents.
Exactly. Yeah. And then they look at it, they smell this, and then they look at the ingredients like, I was right. Like, man, I'm not there yet.
No, not yet. I'm not either.
Now, I can tell you that something smells sweet. I can't tell you where it was derived from, but I can definitely tell you when it's something sweeter. And this is definitely one that is sweeter.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes me like it. Now, all bourbons aren't going to have that kind of sweet taste to it. So you got to kind of figure out which works for you. I think that a little bit of sweetness is good for me. I definitely don't want anything too sweet though.
Right.
Anything that's kind of overpowering with that. Now, when it comes to things like that, just from your opinion, the sweetness in a bourbon or sweetness in any whiskey. How do you like that? Like, do you like that? Like, is that a thing, or is it such thing as being too sweet for a bourbon?
So I don't like it to be too sweet up front, right? Yeah. So right as I'm taking it, but like but after, you know, I like to have that, you know, that sweetness kind of settle in. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and I don't like it too sweet up front just because I don't want it to just be kind of be shot. You know, I just want it to be kind of smooth with that caramel taste. You know, okay. Maybe almost that smoky type taste. You know. Yeah. But and then kind of the after notes, you know, kind of be kind of fruity. So
the after notes.
The after notes.
See,
picking up some stuff right there.
Yeah, but that's actually what it is called. Yeah. But so now, when it comes to bourbons, obviously we differentiate the two between the single barrel and the others, and the kind of sweetness of the essence. Now, past that though, when did you first get hip? Because I know we were talking about Jack Daniels. Mm-hmm. So when did you first get hip to like bourbon, like, and even knowing that it was a difference? Because, like, you know how you drink some stuff and, like, somebody would have told you it was whiskey. You just figure it's whiskey and never would have known that bourbon was different than, like, regular whiskey. Right. So, like, when was your first experience with a bourbon?
Hey, so my military mentor, you know, and shout out to having a mentor. That shit, you know, makes a difference in life.
For real. Mentors. Yeah. Mentors rock.
Yeah. But going back to my military mentor, man, you know, black gentleman, whatnot. So we had these things, these balls, or whatever, from time to time. You had to put on your dress uniform and all that good stuff. You know, and there's a, you know, a process for everything. This is how you use the silverware, your fork, you know, all that good stuff.
You learned all that stuff?
Oh yeah, learned all that. Yeah. So, you know, kind of the pre up to that, you know, I was an officer, right? So they kind of made that whole distinction, you know, we're enlisted or, you know, we're commissioned, all that good. Anyway, so hanging out with, you know, some of the more senior officers.
Right.
And, you know, kind of seeing how they interact with each other and what they're drinking and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And my mentor kind of pulling me aside. The first one I went to, you know, I had a bottle of Martell, I think, right?
Oh, man.
You know what I mean? He kind of pulls me aside, like, yeah,
right.
Come here,
you came with the inner city drink.
Yeah. He's like, let me tell you a little bit about bourbon and stuff. He's like, you know, it's cool if you want to drink that. That's cool.
Right,
but
it's cool.
If you want to get into, you know, kind of those circles and make those connections and network a little bit, you need to, you know, start learning a little bit about bourbon. So he kind of put me onto it. Yeah. And then I liked it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it kind of sounded like the same situation with the Jack Daniels. You got to a situation where it's like it really is a networking tool, though. I mean, when you don't even think about stuff like that originally. Like when you drinking originally, when you first started drinking, it's probably just to get drunk. But then once you realize, like, to get in certain circles, even though you may not be familiar with those things, in order to jump into some of those circles, you do have to familiarize yourself with those things. Mm-hmm. So, like you said, you pulled up with the Martell, man. That's the throwback.
And
But you gotta be able to be open to new things, and bourbons and whiskeys and scotches, things like that. I hate to say it, but the reality of it is that the top percentage of people, the upper echelon of business executives and stuff, is a white world. Like I'm sorry. Like, if you didn't know that, then I'm getting you hip to it. We're working our way into it, but at the same time, it's an old boys club. Yeah, sometimes you gotta get in and figure out their inner workings.
To infiltrate.
Yeah, in order to infiltrate, dog, for real. And I'm not saying infiltrate in like a demeaning way. I'm saying, like, we gotta work our way in, and sometimes in order to work your way in, you gotta. Hey, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, dog. You know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying. So, I think that, just like when you was talking about Jack Daniels yesterday, I think originally most black people I know, I don't know if this is lumping everybody together, but most black people I know got into whiskeys and bourbon because of that. Like, I don't know nobody who, like, started off just drinking bourbon, like, for no reason.
So, you know, my uncle was talking about, you know, cats that kind of hop into bourbon right away. Yeah. And he thinks it's kind of geographically, because in the South, you know, they already kind of come from, well, not everyone obviously, but they already had that knowledge and know how to distill and make quote unquote, you know, illegal alcohol and liquor and whatnot.
Right.
So moonshine. Moonshine or whatever else, you know. So you know, inadvertently, I'm sure they created something, you know, bourbon or something similar to bourbon, and that's what they drank.
Yeah, for
sure. Yeah, but like, you know, folks up here don't know nothing about that. Then yeah, like black folks, like, it's what I think. I got started with like E&J and Hennessy. I think, you know,
right. I started with Paul Masson.
Paul Masson, okay.
Yeah, fucking Paul Masson. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, and that's what I figured. Like, I get what you're saying though. Geographically, yeah, if you down there, bunch of moonshiners, you probably drunk bourbon by accident and all kind of whiskeys.
Right, all kind of
all kind of whiskeys because that's what they was making and shit. So I can understand that how that could be, you know, geographical. For us though, like up north and in other places, I think unless you got turned on to something like by you know, a higher up, a mentor in your case, or like maybe somebody at work or something, I don't really see nobody up north like getting turned on to bourbon like off rip.
No.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like not really off rip. Now you say you learned about it while being in the army, and I think that's one thing. Obviously, it gets you into that position where you with other officers and higher ups and shit. And they kind of in a whole different zone and shit. Like for me, I wasn't in no like corporate setting or like a military setting like that. So I think how I originally, well, first of all, one thing happened by accident. Like when I was in college, I had some Jim Beam, and that was bourbon, right? So I had Jim Beam purely accidentally. I don't even know, somebody else had it, and I had some of it. I didn't like the shit then. So I honestly didn't get to like bourbons and stuff until shout out to Angry Principal, who also put me up on cigars and everything else. I started drinking bourbon with him, and I believe the first bourbon I had was Knob Creek. That's the first. Yeah, that's the first bourbon I had. He turned me on to that, and the reason I liked it originally is because it had the. Let me see. Oh no, I'm thinking of something. I'm thinking of Maker's Mark. Okay. Yeah, I think I had Maker's Mark first because it had the. Where they, you know,
red wax.
Melt the shit, the wax on it, and that's how I remember that shit. So that was my very first bourbon, and that shit was good. So like when I had it then, again, I was in my 30s. Like this was late in the game by the time I figured it out. But from that point, I did like the taste, and again, I mentioned this on the previous show. But it was just something about being able to survive the day after when you drinking bourbon. Like when you drinking a lot of the cognacs and what's the other shit? Brandies. Yeah, a lot of cognacs and brandies, man. They leave a lot to be desired the next day.
Yeah, like it made life difficult a little bit.
It made life a little difficult
to get around a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. So with the bourbon and the whiskey, man, it was so much different. And again, we probably do a show on Maker's Mark, but that was my very first one. But like I said, the mistake though came in college where I was drinking somebody else's drink, and I hated that shit. I didn't like it. And maybe because Jim Beam just not good. Jim Beam probably not the best choice.
Yeah, you know, I mean, right. I'm not a fan really of Jim Beam.
Not a fan of Jim Beam.
Jack, I mean, y'all drink Jack and all that stuff, but yeah, I'm not really a fan of all those. But
right.
It is. And I think the other thing too was just kind of culturally, you know, what we saw at that time, right? You know, growing up around that time, you know, you see Hennessy, you see the Cristal and stuff like that. You know, that's what we saw. So we thought that's like, okay, that's what we should be drinking and whatnot.
Which is funny though. Just from our culture, it's funny because we drink cognacs and shit like that because it's more expensive. And honestly, some of the bourbons and some of the whiskeys are less expensive, but they cater to a higher level of crowd. That's weird though, right?
And it could be because our dumb asses was buying that shit at $60 a bottle too.
Right.
Oh, they gonna buy it for $60? Okay.
Exactly. And that's something crazy about our black culture as a whole, man. We put a lot of inferences on how much something costs, when at the same time the cost of that thing might not match the quality of that thing. Like, cause it's crazy that I can drink something like even Four Roses to be exact. Which may be like a beginner's bourbon, but if you can spend $21, $22, less than $25 on a fifth of bourbon, that will get you into the room with people that you wouldn't normally communicate with. But on reverse of that, you'll spend $45 on a bottle of Hennessy that's gonna get you in a room full of you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel you.
Full of people that's not gonna elevate. Right. You know what I'm saying? What you try to do in life. So it's funny that we, like in our black culture, we kind of put so much emphasis on the cost of things, and it don't never really match the quality of it. That's something crazy.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I think we starting to break away from that though.
I hope so.
And, you know, because as you see, like organizations like the Black Bourbon Society, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you know, maybe, you know, hey, we like this too, You know, but we kind of wanted to put our own spin on things. You know what I mean?
So which is what we're doing here.
Right. So I think we kind of, hopefully we backing away from that a bit, starting to do some more of our own stuff.
Yeah. So you start seeing more shows like ours, you know what I'm saying? And you can, I think it's important for a show like ours only because I think for us, especially black men coming from the inner city, we have to see people who look like us and do the things that we do, doing other things. Because otherwise it's like, it seems unattainable.
Right.
So like you see me, like
you like to see yourself.
Yeah, you like to see yourself. Yeah, it's like that simple and plain. Simple and plain. And that's kind of like how it was with college, right? So we go kind of segue into that. That's kind of how it was with college, though. Like for me, it wasn't a lot of black men in my neighborhood who went away to college. Like by the time I went, I think it was maybe two black friends of mine that were actually in college, and then my sister ended up going. And so you're talking about out of a generation of people, you're talking about 3 people who went to school. So it was never an idea for real, because I never seen people that look like me doing it. And this is kind of the same thing. Now, just to go a little bit deeper into that, because of course we're not only talking about beers, bourbons, and whiskeys, but we're talking about life too. And I think that going back to that, not seeing like people that look like you going to school. Now there's an abundance of people going to school, black, white, and other, you know what I'm saying? So everybody's going to school. But I got to ask you this, though. I mean, just from a standpoint, and again, I always have to preface this by saying, yes, I do have a college degree, all right? I did go through the whole institutionalized education and came out on the other end with a piece of paper. But I will ask you this, though. How important do you think higher education really is for the black community? Like the institution higher education?
I always think I'm being hypocritical when I say this, right? Because, you know, like you said, you had to preface it with you have a bachelor's degree. You know, I have a bachelor's degree as well. You know, and 2 master's degrees on top of that. So most people would look at, you know, if they was to see my resume, like, okay, education is pretty important to this dude, and education is. Now the way you go about and gives the education, I think I've kind of changed my outlook on, so to speak, right?
Right.
You know, the whole institute, the idea, I guess, ideology of going to school. I'm gonna pay you, you know, X amount of dollars a year for tuition and all that stuff, like.
Right.
And what do I get back from it? I get it back a piece of paper that says, "Hey, I did all this stuff over the last 4 years," right? But then we also see. And this ain't just black people. This is really everybody. Yeah, but, but it really affects us. You know, it affects us because we come from where, like you said, we're the first generation. So we kind of going through those, trials and whatever, tribulations and lessons learned and whatnot. But you get X amount of dollars in debt. You come out, you get a job that doesn't. Maybe you get a job. And most likely your first job not even anywhere in your field.
Nowhere near.
And nowhere making any type of money where you can like pay these loans and all this stuff back.
Right.
And then sustain the life you want to have.
Right.
So if you want to go to college, that's cool. I'm not denying. I'm not
right.
like saying, hey, that's a bad idea. Just have a plan to pay for it. And really think about those trade schools and secondary, ways of getting education. Think about going to community college, and working, full time or part time or whatnot.
Yeah.
But just don't. I just hate to see, because we went through it. Young people go through college and put themselves in all of that debt. Yeah. And there's very little return on your investment up front, right. ROI. Right?
I know you're a numbers guy. You're a numbers guy, for sure. And I agree with that. And like I say, coming from that same thing, and that's why I know a few people who went back to school, you included, for sure, for your master's degree and everything. I can't even get myself to do that. Now I know you may have had some assistance from the military, which may have made that you made that a little easier. But I'm not even sure. Like, if I could go for free, yeah, probably so. But I think the main thing you said is something that I gotta echo that same sentiment, is that if you don't have a way to pay it off, or if you don't have a plan in place to pay it off, then maybe not so much it shouldn't be an option. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't learn. Cause I think this is the discrepancy here. When I feel like you need to learn like every day. You need to learn something every day. I don't necessarily think that it has to come from an institutional education, though.
Right.
Especially with all the information that's available to you at this point. I mean, you are able to be self-taught. I mean, you got to think about things like I think I did an interview a few months ago, and the young man who actually owns the Detroit School for Technology downtown, he was saying how he remembered reading up on Benjamin Banneker, right? So Benjamin Banneker is like the architect of like everything in DC or whatever, and he was saying how when you read the description, everything that he knows is self-taught. And he said that we get to a point now where we feel like being self-taught is like it's like frowned upon. It's like if you taught yourself how to do it, it's like it's not as good as.
And you know,
but so much stuff happened from people who taught themselves.
Right.
Like,
but I think a lot of that pressure though comes from the capitalistic society and whatnot that we're in, right? Yeah. So ABC Corporation comes down and says, "Hey, I've got this director position open. Here's my requirements. Master's degree and blah blah blah, all that required." So like, even though you may be self-taught and you may have the educational background to perform the duties of that job, if it's not official on this piece of paper, then like you're not qualified according to this corporation.
That sucks.
Right? Yeah, and that sucks, right?
Sucks,
but then I think that's just that constant cycle that like, hey, you've got to have these certifications or credentials or whatever.
Right.
And it's hard for people to see it around any other way than to kind of get to be successful in life, right?
Exactly.
So it's just like, I got to go to school because that's what people require. You know?
And that's why a lot of entrepreneurs are frowned upon, because they didn't learn things like the classical way.
Exactly.
And I think that's something that has to change, especially in our community. I think it's something that has to change, because again, I don't want to discourage you from going to school, but certainly have a plan on how to finance it, because the financial burden of a college degree sometimes outweighs the benefits. Like unless you're about to be a doctor, some kind of surgeon, engineer,
engineer, scientist,
then I think that there's different ways to go about it. You don't have to go to the 4-year college. You can go to the 2-year college, figure out some ways to, or even when you find employment that pays your tuition, I think those are options too. I think when we were leaving at first, I frowned upon community college. It's like, you going to community college, it's like you failed. You know what I'm saying? Not knowing now though that you can get 2 years of college for free, get your associate's degree for free. I'm with the shits. Like I'm gonna go to community college and then I'm gonna work that out, and then maybe in the meantime put some money together, or try to get some scholarships to go to a 4-year college, or go find me a job that's gonna pay me to go to school. Like something like you gotta, because the system is using you. I mean, let's just be honest about it. I know a lot of people don't like to talk about this way about the educational system, but it's the truth. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a for-profit organization. Like they making money because they get you in here.
They had that on news with Sally or Navion, whatever it's called.
Navion. They calling me every day. Quit calling me.
Yeah, they flew a bunch of their employees out to Hawaii or something like that because they broke some sales record. Yeah,
they making money.
Yeah, it's a corporation. Yeah.
It's a corporation. So at the end of the day, man, they getting something out of it. So you need to get something out of it too. And I feel like you got to get something out of it more than just the education. You got to get out of it. I think the way you beat the system is when you get the education and you don't owe them nothing. That's when you won. That's the only way I see that you won. Like you get a degree and a $0 balance. That's when you won.
And that's why I think that plan really comes into play, right? I mean, there's things, I think it's called the MESP, Michigan Educational something. It's a 529 plan where you can put some money away, when whoever, if you're thinking about having kids and going to school,
Right.
I don't know all the specifics, and that's what Google's for, I guess.
Right.
But I went to the military, and they paid for me to get my graduate degrees and whatnot, right? And at the time, that was cool, and whether or not I would recommend for someone to go to the military or not, that's on you, whatever decision you want to make, right? I mean, if you can't see any other way to pay for school, I mean, there's other options out there too. I have a friend of mine that went to the Peace Corps. Peace Corps paid for his tuition and whatnot, right?
Oh, damn.
I think it's a program through the state and federal called City Year or something like that, where you do community service, and depending on how many hours and the effect you have, part of that comes back to pay for yourself. So in your tuition. So I mean, there's a lot of ways out there. We got to start researching how to pay for school. And then, like I said, a lot of these community colleges now, if you're a resident of that county or whatever it is, a lot of that is severely discounted or free.
Definitely.
Wayne State came out with that news today or yesterday, whatever it was, about Indian City, Detroit. So residents. So just be creative about, if you really want to go to school, have a plan, and then on top of that, keep looking for extra money, other creative ways you can make it happen.
Always got to do that
because it's nice to get a refund check, without having to take out a loan,
Yeah, do something with that refund check.
Yeah. Don't do what we did with it. Let's just say that, right?
Yeah, so like those, like the refund checks, like we just mentioned that about refund checks, and it's something that me and Bo and a few other people had talked about not too long ago. I was just thinking, what if we had used those refund checks to like do investments like during that time? Now I blew my refund checks on some on some stuff I don't even remember. Yeah, basically some bullshit. I tried to call it something else, but that's what it is. But what if we'd have used like maybe even, let's say 80% of those refund checks, or even half, and just made some kind of investment through those whole 4 or 5, 6, or 7 years, however long it takes you, because it took me a long time to get out of school. But
everybody has a different plan.
Right, everybody got a different plan. But yeah, if you'd have used a percentage of that refund check and made some investments, I feel like this, at least, even if you didn't break the bank at the end of the joint, like I feel like you would have at least made enough dividends to pay them loans back. Like at least if you was able to do that, then it's a win-win. Again, you get back to that situation where you got a degree out of it and you leave with a $0 balance, you defeat the system. So this is something I wish I had known or even thought about.
That financial literacy we talk about, right?
That's what it is.
And you got to teach that patience too, because I think I think a lot of times, again, we live in an age of instant gratification, right?
For sure.
So like, if you invest in something, 9 times out of 10, most of the time, unless you just get lucky, on a stock or mutual fund or whatever it is,
it's not coming right back.
Like, it's not coming right back to you, right? And like, most times it's not going to double what you put into it too. Like, if you, for some of the stuff I have nowadays, if I get like 8% return, I'm happy. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So like, teaching, that, realistic expectations, along with that money, I think too, is a big part of it.
Yeah, so just thinking about that return of investment, man, like the whole school thing, I think you really just gotta focus on the other side of it. I think that you can't be so excited about, like for me, I was excited about the fact of being like one of the first few to actually be able to go. And I think that's a motivating factor, but at the same time, like you don't want that to be your only motivation, because it turns into debt. I mean, that's just what it is. It turns into debt, and you gotta be able to to make it make sense, I guess. And that just means getting the paper out of it, which means getting your degree, but also not walking away with some treacherous debt that's going to have that degree, like, not being worth it. I think that's kind of thing. And I think that's what's exciting about what's going on in Detroit. Wayne State University is actually giving away free tuition to Detroit residents who graduate from Detroit public schools and private schools.
Public schools, private schools, and charter schools. Yeah, they have to be Detroit residents. So,
okay, damn, charter schools too.
Charter schools too. Yep.
Okay, now that'll work. And now a situation like that, obviously, I know the criteria is just that, but it may be an abundance of people. So that at the end of the day, it may be some kind of different determination, just like it is with any other grants or awards when you're trying to go to school. But I think that's a perfect opportunity right there. To take advantage of, especially when you're from the city of Detroit. Like I said, you're talking about a city that's the unemployment rate has gotten so high that I think that now it's only on the decline because people are not reporting no more. It's not because they working; they just not telling.
Had nowhere else to go but down, I guess. Just like
right. So salute.
Got to be getting jobs somewhere.
Hey, so salute to Wayne State for that gesture, man. I think that's definitely gonna be.
That's major. Yeah,
that's major. It's gonna be a look in the right direction. Something like that, definitely I say take advantage of it.
Right.
If you can get that education for free, there's no way you should turn it down. It's only when you have to pay for it. I'm not saying turn it down then, but just be strategic in how you're going to finance it, because that's a serious line of credit. That's a serious line of
definitely.
credit. Yeah,
and it's about your motivations too, right? Because I've got some benefits left over from the military and whatnot. And I think it'd be pretty cool. I like researching, I like reading and all that good stuff. But I think it'd be pretty cool one day to be called Dr. Emery. You know what I mean? Go get a PhD.
Right.
You know, but I looked into it financially, and I'm like, man, the benefits I have won't cover everything, so I'll be on the hook for X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah. So right now,
So right now, I'm like, I'm putting it on hold until I can be creative about how I want to pay for it, right?
Exactly.
You know, but yeah. So I think a lot of it comes down to your motivations too, right? You know, so if you know that's what you want to do, and that's cool. Yeah. Just how am I gonna make this happen financially?
Exactly.
And if that's not a worry for you, then hey,
by all means,
man, go for it. You know, because not everybody in that situation, so make it happen if that's not a worry for you.
For sure, man. So just to kind of round it out, man, just go ahead and round this episode out. I did just want to say that education, I think, is definitely important for the Black community. Not necessarily always in the form of institutional education. I think you need to always be learning, whether it be from personal experience, because that means you may be actually immersed in a business rather than learning about business in the classroom. Like, to me, those learning skills are still the same. So you just need to have some everyday learning. Like, you just got to know that every day that you wake up, there's something new that you can learn. I think that's important. Paying for an institutional education, I'm not gonna always be the forerunner of saying like you should do it, even though, like I said, I feel like I can say that because I went through it. Like, I actually have a degree. I came from a situation like, I mean, I'm from 48205. Like, we're from the inner city of Detroit, where a lot of people, not only were you not expected to go to college, you weren't even expected to live. So, like, I understand all those circumstances.
That's real for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's real for a lot of people. And I lived through that situation, and I went to school and I got a degree. And honestly, I certainly was not the best student, maybe been the worst student to ever graduate college. But still, even with that being said, even with that being said, the only thing that I would change was the way I financed the project. Outside of that, I mean, it's just like looking at any other business, though. I think when you get through a business and you see it start trending down a certain way, and then you start looking back at the beginnings, like, I wish I'd have invested this, that, or the third. That's kind of the same thing it is with school. And I think the proper investment, that's financial and others. Like, it's not always financial. The investment comes in time and stuff, you know, time and studying and effort and that kind of thing too. So all of that goes into play. So I'm just saying, when you make that decision to go to college, it has to be an inclusive decision. It can't just be because like everybody else going, or because I feel like I'm the first one in the family that need to go. Like, you really need to plan it out. And unfortunately, generation before us, especially in my case, they didn't have this experience. So nobody could tell me what you need to do. Now we're the torchbearers. We're the ones who went to school. We're the ones who got in debt. And now we gotta kind of give you the warning to let you know what's going on.
Well, Steph, I guess what I'd like to add to that, man, is so education, you know, that can happen every day, right? Sure. And there's so many other resources out there for those people that just like to learn or just want to learn something. You know, a lot of these public universities offer free access to like their database system, the library database system, if you're like a resident of that county or town or whatever. Right. So that's something to look into. There's websites out there like Khan Academy that'll teach you just like everything from geometry to like how to install like, you know, like an air conditioner or whatever. Right. You know, so, you know, that information, if you need a certain set of information, and let's say you're in a situation where you can't afford to get it or whatever your situation may be, it's out there. You know, right. you just got to kind of look for it. It's out there somewhere, and then just, you know, flip it to kind of make it work for you. Yeah, so just be creative with everything, folks. I mean,
yeah, definitely be creative.
Yeah, don't let money and all that stuff, you know, dissuade you. You know, you may not be in a situation to do everything you want to do right away or within your time frame, but be flexible. Just be creative with it. You know.
Sure. Man, on that note, I guess that's a good way to segue up out of here.
Oh,
right. We go end on that because that was a great point, and I certainly agree. Go ahead and pour you another shot.
Go ahead.
We go toast on our way out of here.
Roses.
For sure.
And again, good starter bourbon for you folks out there. You know what I mean? Go check it out.
Good starter bourbon, especially if you feel like the bourbons or whiskeys may be too harsh for you. Mm-hmm. This one does have a sweeter taste to it, so I think this is a good novice way to jump into it because it's not too strong. It has a delicious taste, if you ask me.
Delicious.
Delicious. And plus, like I said, if you're not really used to the bourbons or whiskeys, I think this is a good segue because it's not too strong. That little sweetness will allow you to actually enjoy yourself. Mm-hmm. So again, I want to thank everybody who checked us out today for another episode of Beards, Bourbons, and Whiskeys. And as I always say, man, everybody loves BBW. Beers, bourbon, and whiskey. For sure, man. Till next time, man. Salud.